In this video, we're going to be talking about the Logitech 4K Pro Webcam. If you guys have seen my other videos, I like to keep everything simple, straight to the point. I'll be showing you what it looks like compared to the C920, as well as what kind of settings you're going to be able to adjust, and just some different tips and differences that I noticed when switching from the C920 to the Brio. So by the end of this video, you should be able to decide if this is going to be the purchase for you. So if that sounds good to you, make sure to drop a like on the video to help other streamers find this video. And I'll also leave both of these webcams in the description down below so you can follow along at home. But let me bring up a side-by-side between the Logitech Brio and the Logitech C920. So just looking at the two right now, you can see that the Brio is a lot more defined, it's a lot sharper, the colors are a lot nicer, and overall I've noticed it just works a lot better when you're not having as much light to work with. Another thing to note is that the Logitech Brio is a 4K webcam with 30 FPS, whereas the C920 is actually only 1080p. However, with the Logitech, you can actually switch between the 4K or you can do 1080p 60 FPS, so you have way more options. The biggest difference between these two webcams is obviously the price range. The C920, you can usually get your hands on it about $70 to $80, whereas the Brio, you'll usually find it on sale for about $160 to a retail of about $200. So you might be thinking, well, this costs about twice as much more, but you can kind of see the quality difference between the two. And as you guys know, I used the C920 up until about a month ago. If you guys are really balling on a budget, the C920 is a great entry point into streaming and making YouTube videos and anything video related when it comes to your computer. However, if you get annoyed with the quality from the C920 like I did and you want to take the next step, I think the Brio was the absolute perfect stepping stone in between getting a DSLR camera, which goes for thousands of dollars when you get a whole setup, which is why I think the Brio was a perfect stepping stone in between. Now that you guys can kind of see a comparison between the two webcams, I'm going to go into Logitech G Hub's free software, and then we can kind of tweak around and see what kind of limits we can push both of these webcams to so you guys can get a better idea. So this is the free G Hub software that comes with either of the cameras. The C920, I'm just going to take a look at the default settings. So this is what happens. This is what you get right out of the box. As you can see, the lighting isn't that great. The exposure is kind of off, but we can go and tweak all of that. So what I'll do is I'll make a new camera mode, but this is what it looks like just out of the box with my current lighting setup. So I'm going to add a new camera mode. So we'll just add a new camera mode, and then we can go and change things from there. As you can see, the exposure kind of already fixed itself, which is nice. The zoom, it already is kind of zoomed in for the most part. If you want, you can zoom out to the max, and this is like the widest it'll have. But you'll notice later with the Brio that it actually naturally has a wider shot, and then you also have different choices to make it more zoomed in. So I'm just going to try and make this look as good as possible on a very short amount of time. Exposure, I'm going to take the auto off, and that's going to make it a little darker. Now you can see the more the exposure goes up, the more the frame rate drops, which is because just by a general rule of thumb, the more you have your webcam working, the harder it's going to be to get a better image. So instead of turning the exposure up, the correct call is to just make your room a lot more brighter, get some key lights. I'll leave a beginner key light package in the description down below that you can check out, and I'll leave a video in the top right corner that goes over more webcam tips and tricks to be able to get better shots for your webcams. I'm going to drop the exposure down until the frame rate's about good. I'd say this is pretty good. It's very clean and crisp. Now it is a little darker, I will say that, so we would need to get more lighting in our shot, unlike having the Brio, but for now this is pretty good. So I'll just go to the video. You can mess with the brightness and contrast, but like I said, you know, you don't really want to have your webcam working too much. You can just light up your shot otherwise. So you can mess with the sharpness, the white balance, saturation, so on and so forth. But honestly, this is pretty decent from what I have been using in the past for my other videos. So let's check out the Brio, the whole reason I made this video. So if we go back here and we'll click on Brio, and then we are on the default settings. So this is what it looks like by default. As you can see, the shot is much brighter. However, you can see that the frame rate's not so great, and that's typically because the exposure is a little bit too high, which naturally means I should have more lighting in my room, but hey, we're not perfect. Let's do some tweaking right now. Instead of being on default, let's add a new camera mode. We have different fields of view, which is one of my favorites. The C920, I would say probably was about 78, and that's just kind of like how far it is. But check this out. I press 90. Look at how wide of an angle shot this is, which is very cool because the C920 is just about like right there, maybe kind of in between. It's like pretty zoomed in. You don't get as big of a wide shot on the C920 as you do as the Brio. So now that we have our nice shot out here, we can also take off the auto exposure like so. The autofocus, I don't like using autofocus. I think it kind of messes up a lot, specifically more with the C920, but I just like to keep my focus on one. I don't really hold stuff up to the camera that much, so it just makes sense for me. So now we can go to the video mode, and then you can change the brightness, contrast, sharpness. I like to leave all this pretty much as close as possible to the default settings because, the less work, the better. But this is the mode that I like to use, and it's pretty much matching what my shots are for YouTube. The only other thing that I do is I just zoom it in just a little bit. I do like 109, and then from there you can kind of just change the little position of it. And this is basically basically what my YouTube videos look like now. I barely changed anything. I didn't even zoom in that much. I put 9% to the zoom, turned off auto exposure, and that's pretty much it. So this is my normal YouTube setup now with the Logitech Brio 4K camera. You can see if you compare it to my other videos how much more clear, crisp, and the colors are a lot more vibrant. So from a streamer's perspective and not some webcam guru, I am absolutely thrilled with the quality that I'm getting from the Logitech Brio, especially when you compare it to some of my other videos on the C920. So if you guys like the Brio just as much as I do, I'll leave a link in the description down below where you guys can grab one. I think it's the ultimate webcam for streamers and YouTubers that are just starting to get their feet wet with this kind of stuff, that don't want to spend thousands of dollars on a DSLR. So if you guys need any more help with your webcams, you guys can check out these videos right here. But my name's Cody, and I'll see you in the next one.